Hey, smash that like button. Good morning, Keith Olbermann. He's melting down. His little threat backfired on him because Scott Jennings, he tossed the threat up to the FBI. Scott Jennings, he shut him down with a savage response on his radio program. So we're going to get to that. An update there for you. Sanctuary city politicians, are they safe from arrest? We'll have to find out coming up in just a little bit. Chicago families are paying the price if we don't arrest these sanctuary city politicians. The White House, Caroline Leavitt, she got behind the podium and she said, we're probably not going to arrest any of the sanctuary city mayors or city officials or anything like that unless they commit a crime, which would be aiding and abetting. I think that they've proven just the sanctuary city policy itself and status itself proves that they're aiding and abetting and harboring illegals. So I think the White House needs to be stronger, and I think that they need to start arresting people because Chicago families have paid the price for far too long. So we're going to get to that. Illinois tax dollars hard at work. A murder suspect was paid with your money to be an anti-violence murderer or worker. An anti-violence worker working with the Peacekeepers Initiative. Governor J.B. Pritzker responded to this picture of him like posing with this murderer. He's wanted for murder. Was wanted in 4 other states. Hardened criminal. And, Governor J.B. Pritzker was like, well, you can't vet everybody you take a picture with. Yeah, but we can make sure that taxpayer dollars aren't being paid to murderers to be anti-violence workers. It's kind of like paying an arsonist to be a fire safety inspector, okay, or a fire safety consultant. I also want to get to Kamala Harris. We've got so much to get to today. So you won't want to miss a second of the show. Kamala Harris, she was on The View, and she embarrassed herself pretty badly, as usual. She embarrassed herself again. She returns to The View. The last time she was on The View, it was really bad, but I think it was even worse this time. So we're going to get to that. As always, you can comment, like, love, share this. Good morning, Kat. David Yeeds. Good morning. Good morning. Shalom. 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 Fun fact, people might not know this. Shalom. Everybody knows that means peace, but you say it twice. Shalom. Shalom. Because that means perfect peace. I love that. I love that. Shalom, shalom. I'm glad that you're here this morning. And yes, they have definitely aided and abetted. And I think that the White House needs to be stronger. Very rarely do I come behind this microphone and criticize Caroline Leavitt or the Trump administration. But when I do, it is definitely, I would say, warranted. They need to be stronger in their response here to these sanctuary cities and the sanctuary city politicians. Okay, so yesterday, if you had tuned into the show, I reported that the failed former MSNBC, I think he worked for ESPN, he's an anchor, if you guys don't know who Keith Olbermann is. I had shared with you yesterday that Scott Jennings had alerted the FBI director, Kash Patel, about a disturbing, unhinged comment he had made directed at Scott Jennings, who is a Salem radio host. He also, you might know him from the CNN panels. He's a CNN contributor. And he made some unhinged comments amid a debate that he and Scott Jennings were having about the suspension of the Jimmy Kimmel show. I'm still very confused about that. I don't know if local affiliates picked him up or not last night. Let me know in the comment section if you tuned in and happened to stumble upon Jimmy Kimmel's show. At first, Nexstar said that they were going to bring him back for tomorrow night. And then all of a sudden they issued a statement saying they weren't going to. And then Sinclair said that they weren't going to. So it's just a mess. Let me know if you saw him. Okay. Last night, I tried so hard to find out. I don't think that he actually performed. Or that he actually got out there last night, Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't know. The ABC affiliates, they don't want to air him because his comments were so wild. And I mean, not wild, outright lies. And as I've told you several times, being that these are broadcasters, ABC, they're broadcasters, there is a a higher criteria that they have to meet for the public good. Because they hold an FCC license, you can't just get out there and lie behind the microphone. I would never do that to you here, but I don't have the same standards as a broadcaster because I'm a YouTuber, right? I don't hold an FCC license. So Jimmy Kimmel, he was briefly yanked off TV, I think. I don't know if he came back last night. From what I understand, I don't think he did. But he made some remarks, insensitive remarks, but even beyond that, outright lies about the alleged assassin of the conservative icon Charlie Kirk. We know this. And Scott Jennings and Keith Olbermann, they were kind of going back and forth and debating online. To quickly recap, Scott Jennings, he reacted to the breaking news of Kimmel being reinstated, and he tweeted, so basically his employer suspended him for being an insensitive prick. Okay, and we don't live in an authoritarian regime. Got it. So, of course, the leftists, they were being unhinged, and they said Donald Trump took Jimmy Kimmel off the air, which is not true. It was always that Jimmy Kimmel was a liability because they hold an FCC license, and he lied. And he's also probably, his contract isn't up, so it's tough to get rid of him. And this was kind of like they're out likely. We saw Stephen Colbert, he was nixed, he was canceled. Because I mean, it costed the company $50 million to keep him on. They're probably looking for an excuse at this point to can Jimmy Kimmel because it's just too expensive. And anyway, from the beginning, this was not a matter of free speech. Donald Trump did not use the government to get Jimmy Kimmel off of the air or cancel Jimmy Kimmel. This was an employer acting as an employer saying, my employee lied and is a liability now. The juice isn't really worth the squeeze. Okay. We never lived in an authoritarian regime. And that's what Scott Jennings talked about on X. Now, enter stage left, Keith Olbermann. He was completely enraged and he proceeded to tweet that, what I perceive as a threat. I'm just going to say this. I think it was a threat, and it was disgusting. He says, "You're next, MFer." That's what Keith Olbermann tweeted out in response to Scott Jennings talking about how we don't live in an authoritarian regime, and it was just his employer firing a guy that lied. Okay, that's what Scott Jennings said. And Jennings, he then forwarded that tweet from Keith Olbermann, really threatening him, to Kash Patel. And he sent the screen grabs of the tweet to Kash Patel. Okay. So you're all caught up. And the FBI has not commented whether they're investigating or not. I think that they should. Scott Jennings is a radio host. He is seen on CNN all the time. He's viral all the time. Olbermann, he appears now to have regretted his tweet and to be in regret because he deleted his tweet, and then now he's profusely apologized for this tweet, and he is claiming now that he was misinterpreted. Okay. I do want to share this with you because he hasn't responded or apologized for this tweet. This is a real tweet. He said, "Burn in hell, Sinclair, for canceling Jimmy Kimmel alongside Charlie Kirk." There's no apology for that. Although he apologized, he says, I condemn political violence, all forms of political violence. And he goes on and he says, and the threat of it, I condemn political violence and the threat of it. All times are wrong, or all times are the wrong time to leave even an inadvertent impression of it. But this time is especially wrong. I should have acknowledged the deletion and apologized yesterday. I'm sorry I delayed. So he goes, I apologized to Scott Jennings. Yesterday I wrote and immediately deleted 2 responses to him about Kimmel because they could be misinterpreted as a threat to anything beside his career. Okay, I immediately replaced them with one specifying what I actually meant. So this is what he says. Okay, so he's apologizing. He didn't apologize for that tweet, by the way. He apologized to the threat, and it was, he goes, it was inadvertent and blah, 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 and I condemn political violence. And apparently he was talking about his career. You're next, MFer. Okay. I don't believe it, but sure, whatever. So Scott Jennings, he, of course, was on his radio show and he responded to it. We're going to get to that response here in just a second. Now, I like what Scott Jennings says here on his radio show, because he says, really, this is a perfect example of somebody's brain who's just been broken by progressivism. Okay, so take a listen to Scott Jennings here on his radio program. Here we go.
Live on the Salem Radio Network, marking myself safe from that nut, Keith Olbermann, who you might have read, threatened yours truly on the internet yesterday. Everybody seems to have taken notice of this. The poster boy for left-wing outrage, the poster boy for complete broken brain progressivism, threatening me, of all people. Live on the Salem Radio Network, marking myself safe.
Okay, so he marked himself safe from Keith Olbermann, and he referred to him as the poster boy for complete broken brain progressivism. Chef's kiss, beautiful response. Love it, Scott Jennings. Later, after his radio show, he took to X and he goes, but now that I think about it, am I really? And the reason why Scott Jennings, I believe, is saying this now, is he really safe? One, he's a moderate. You know, they killed Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a moderate. You're probably further right than Charlie Kirk if you're watching this show. I was, critical of TPUSA's choices to, and I'm not totally against her. I mean, Nala Ray, she was a porn star OnlyFan, and they had her, do some speaking arrangements and things like that. They were kind of thrusting her out there into the spotlight, and I said, hey, look, TPUSA should probably be a little bit skeptical. Is this a clout chasing thing, from an OnlyFans? I do truly believe Nala Ray did find Jesus and changed her life completely around. But, you don't want to be thrusting people into the spotlight and having them be TPUSA contributors if you haven't done the proper vetting, and, maybe give it some time. She's a baby Christian. Give her some time to explore her faith and to really dig into her faith before you start thrusting her out there in the spotlight and paying her or anything like that. I was critical of TPUSA. I mean, TPUSA is super moderate. Okay. I remember back in 2021, I went to a TPUSA conference and they were handing out the Second Amendment, you being gay, your Second Amendment right protects you being gay or something like that. They're not as right as you would think. It's not a right leaning. I would say it's center right leaning organization, TPUSA. Okay. Great organization. But Scott Jennings, also a moderate, by the way. And we know that they will go kill moderates, i.e. Charlie Kirk. Okay. They will go put a bullet in your neck if you just hold moderate beliefs that are right of center, that are slightly right of center. What the hell would they do to me? Okay. I don't even know. It's insane. I mean, there's people out there, you guys know my belief. I don't believe women should vote. I don't believe that women should really be holding elected office. I know that's controversial, but those are my political beliefs and those are my opinions. And those are, I acknowledge, further right than center, much further right than center. But they would kill Scott Jennings. They definitely would, the left. And he takes to X and he says, but now that I think about it, am I really safe? Am I marked safe from Keith Olbermann? Because this is not the first time that Keith Olbermann has fantasized about a GOP public figure dying or getting killed. It's not the first time. So, for instance, about 4 months ago, before the first assassination attempt on the then, or 4 months before the first assassination attempt, okay, this was before Butler, Pennsylvania, 4 months before it. The then GOP presidential nominee, Donald Trump, Olbermann had expressed hope that Trump would get treated worse than Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated. Okay, he came out and said things about how he thinks Donald Trump should be treated worse than Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated. Okay, and this happened 4 months before the first assassination attempt. So I've talked a lot about people who I'd like to see off of X or out of the public spotlight. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg being probably one of the top. The View. Let's just say The View we would all be better off without The View. Okay. I would love to see Keith Olbermann delete his X account and just get out of the public eye. Because what he says is very unhinged and dangerous. And I would prefer him get off X and do some soul searching. Because this stuff should never be normalized. Saying, oh, I hope Trump gets treated worse than Abraham Lincoln. You're next, MFer. Like, none of that stuff should ever be normalized, no matter how much the fringy, very online left wants it to be normalized, this sort of rhetoric. Okay, it should not be normalized. And really, these people need to be canceled. And I don't mean that from the government, right? You have your free speech rights. You shouldn't be prosecuted or killed for your beliefs or for what you say. However, we as a culture and as private citizens should definitely condemn Olbermann and his comments and other online lefties that say similar things. So I almost thought Olbermann was off of X. Back a couple of years ago, I talked about this. He said that he was leaving X, because Elon Musk or whatever, I'm pretty sure. And he returned to X shortly after declaring that he was going to leave X. And he made a post to Lauren Boebert. And back then he said, oh, I was misinterpreted about me saying I was going to leave X in 2023. So take a look at this. This is a beautiful tweet. I'm kind of glad that we have receipts. I'd love to see him off Twitter, but here we go. Keith Olbermann. Also, I'm sorry you can't read, but I never said I was leaving Twitter. I wrote that I was no longer posting new material here. I never said anything about replies, especially not to half-witted congresswomen who can't handle themselves in public. So this is what Keith Olbermann said. Lauren Boebert, he falsely claimed that he was going to leave X, and that's what she's saying. And Lauren Boebert, she called him out on it. And, I just keep seeing this trend. It seems like we all just keep misinterpreting poor Keith Olbermann. He's just always misunderstood. He's always misinterpreted, I guess. How long are you going to use this cop-out, man? I'm misinterpreted. I'm misunderstood online. No, stand by what you say. Honestly, I would have more respect for you if you just stand by what you say and don't do this whole, well, I'm misinterpreted. I'm misunderstood. Oh, poor baby. Poor Keith. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about, really I want to talk about sanctuary cities. That's where I'm at today. Friends, patriots, truth seekers, this is the Conservative Cat Show. If you want to support the program, throw a comment in the comment section. You can always super chat me. You can always go to patriotpumpenergy.com. Buy your bottle of Patriot Pump today. It's a premium pre-workout. It is on the shelf behind me. You can see the bottle back there. That's the fruit punch flavor. It's delicious stuff. And it's a great alternative to the crappy energy drinks that pump you full of sugar, artificial colors, and caffeine. There's no reason for all that caffeine. We put just enough caffeine in there, and then we pair it with the black pepper extract to get you to feel that long-lasting energy all day and that focus and have that focused focus all day. So use promo code ConservativeCat at checkout. You get $10 off. Pretty sweet. Okay, so today we're digging into the latest chaos surrounding sanctuary cities, particularly Chicago and Illinois. Okay, the White House made it very clear. And I'm going to play Caroline Leavitt's comments here because they're important. But they made it clear that they're not going to be arresting mayors or governors, and they're not going to face arrest unless they commit crimes. Well, spoiler alert, aiding and abetting is a crime, and I feel like they've already done that. The sanctuary policy itself sort of aids and abets, okay? So, yeah, White House, you need to do better. Democrats, they can play word games all they want while Chicago burns. Buckle up, folks. We are going to cover Caroline Leavitt's comments. We are going to look at the politicians Daniel Biss and Juliana Stratton. We're also going to take a look at what is deemed or dubbed as the heroin highway on I-290 here in Illinois. And I want to talk about whether Trump's promise to clean up Chicago will actually happen, because I'm getting pretty tired. I don't know about you guys. I've heard that he's going to go in. He promised at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk that he's going to save Chicago. Okay, when? And are you guys going to arrest some of these mayors and governors for aiding and abetting illegals? Okay, if I were to be doing the same thing Governor J.B. Pritzker was doing, or if the same thing Brandon Johnson has been doing with the illegals or some of these mayors, I would be arrested. Okay, that's harboring. You're harboring a criminal. So let's take a listen to this. These are Caroline Leavitt's comments, and then we'll chat about them.
The Advent has openly discussed taking legal action against officials in sanctuary jurisdictions. Just this last weekend, we saw Mayor of Evanston, Daniel Biss, rioting and protesting outside the ICE facility near Chicago. Are there plans to start arresting sanctuary mayors or governors going forwards?
Unless they commit a crime, I don't see them being arrested. But if they are violating federal law, if they are violating state law, then of course they should be arrested by state and local law enforcement. If they're violating federal law, then they can expect the consequences of that behavior.
So I hear people that are afraid that a nationalized police force is bad for our community. I hear communities, people in the community that have had people killed in their families that want to feel safer and have relief. And they are saying that they wish that the federal government and the state and the cities could work together to figure out how to best deter crime. You got to remember the federal National Guard is different than our state National Guard. And if the mayor or the governor called up the National Guard, it would be different. As if, for example, when George Floyd was killed, there was state National Guard. When the National Convention was here, the DNC, there was state National Guard that helped patrol the streets and protect and deter crime. But in this case, it's different. With the federal National Guard, they don't negotiate, they don't work with the local law enforcement, and that's bad.
Okay, so that was LaShawn Ford. We'll get to him here in just a second. First, I want us to talk about Caroline Leavitt. She's the White House press secretary, and she's one of the few sane voices left in D.C., I'd say. But she was asked, Daniel Biss, he's one of the mayor, Evanston mayor, and he's been seen protesting ICE. Okay, and you've got a few days ago, I played the clip of Kat Agabazale. Sorry, I can't even talk about this without laughing because it was such a funny clip. If you guys haven't seen it, it's on my social media page. You can go to Conservative Cat on Facebook. I shared it. She totally got bodied by an ICE agent, and she was protesting. She was really engaging ICE officers. She was asking for it. And she got bodied by an ICE agent, and I mean, soaking wet. She probably doesn't weigh 100 pounds, right? So she's completely bodied by this ICE agent. And, you got Daniel Biss out there, this Evanston mayor, and they're protesting ICE enforcement. And really, it's obstruction. And I'll get to that here in a second. But I want to talk about her response because she says, unless they're committing a crime, I don't see them being arrested. Caroline, come on now. Oh, so what is the crime? They've already committed. Okay, I can help you here. If I or you were to shelter somebody evading federal law, that's aiding and abetting, that's obstruction, that's harboring. But when a Democrat mayor or Kat Agabazale, the Illinois congressional candidate, when they do it, it's called civil disobedience or standing up for immigrants. Folks, it's lawlessness and it is illegal. They're just dressing it up as virtue signaling, in virtue signaling. That is all they're doing. So, shame on the White House. They really need to be tougher when it comes to this stuff. And let's not forget Illinois Lieutenant Governor Stratton. She joined those same protests with Daniel Biss. I mean, I actually played a clip of State Senator Karina Villa. She was chasing after ICE agents, screaming at them to take off their masks. And she said, stay in your houses. She goes, stay in your houses to all the illegal immigrants in this little neighborhood. I mean, this is aiding and abetting. This is obstruction. She's harassing. And I want you to imagine, okay, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, she's the second highest office holder in the state. Okay, governor, lieutenant governor. And she is actively standing against law enforcement by doing these little protests that are not, this is not civil disobedience. I want to make that clear. And I want you to close your eyes and imagine this. Say a Republican governor, okay, or even a Republican lieutenant governor, stood shoulder to shoulder with protesters blocking the IRS from collecting taxes. You'd see federal SWAT teams at their door before sunrise, okay, and at the door of the Republican governor. If the Republican governor was saying, no, you can't come collect the federal income tax from Katrina Barker, from Conservative Cat, you can't come collect her federal income taxes. Most definitely a SWAT team would bust down the door of the Republican governor who was, standing shoulder to shoulder with protesters outside my door, prohibiting them from collecting my tax money. Okay. But here, I mean, you have the same thing, same logic. Okay. You can apply the same thing here. Crickets. Okay. You don't have the White House going and arresting these people for obstruction, for aiding and abetting, for harboring, for sheltering someone who is evading federal law. Okay, it is federal law. It's the law for me to pay my federal income taxes. Okay, if I stopped doing that, or if I was evading the law, and the governor and others were standing between me and the IRS, the governor would be arrested. I would be arrested. You understand? So sanctuary laws, they're like catnip for Democrats. They roll around in it until they're high on their own hypocrisy. Okay. So President Donald Trump said his administration is going to save Chicago from its horrible crime. But let's be real, Chicago is bleeding, and it's going on for a few weeks now, saying that he's going to save Chicago. He needs to invoke the Insurrection Act. Anybody who stands in his way needs to be arrested because they are obstructing, harboring, evading, sheltering people who are evading federal law enforcement. So every weekend brings a fresh bout of statistics of shootings, murderers, and families that are completely destroyed. But what do Democrats say? Well, you heard in that clip, the Center Square YouTube clip, State Representative LaShawn Ford criticized President Donald Trump, saying that he cut $150 million from violence prevention programs. Okay, so he criticized President Donald Trump for cutting money to these violence prevention programs. We're going to get to those prevention programs. They are basically bureaucratic slush funds, layer upon layer of consultants, studies, nonprofits that write glossy reports while gang members laugh their way all the way to the next drug corner. Okay. So these don't do anything. These violence prevention programs, they're job programs for criminals. A lot of them, the Peacekeepers Initiative, being a part of those violence prevention programs. But it's a lot of people to get rich quick through these nonprofit organizations, these nonprofit executive directors. They get rich quick with these exorbitant salaries paid for by the taxpayers of Illinois. Meanwhile, you've got neighborhoods completely collapsing, parents having to bury their teenagers. It's really sad. And Ford says that Trump wants a police state. No. Wanting law and order is not tyranny. This is civilization. This is called civilization. You want law, you want order. Real tyranny is letting gangs, cartels, traffickers own entire neighborhoods while politicians virtue signal about it all on TV. That is tyranny. So Ford claims that the communities are trapped in a political war. That's true, but not for the reason he thinks. They're trapped because Democrat mayors and Democrat governors, they want the illegal votes. Okay, and the federal politicians, they want to open up the borders to allow these people to come in and for these illegals to get to these blue states, and they want illegal votes. They want to count them in the census, and they want to screw up the redistricting by counting the illegals. Okay, citizens, so law-abiding legal citizens, families, they're used as pawns. Okay, they have to deal with the carnage that the illegal immigrants bring because the Democrat mayors and the Democrat governors, they need the illegals for the votes, and they need the illegals for the population supplementation because these blue states have experienced mass exoduses of population from their states because it's run so terribly, because they're taxed so much, the citizenry. So they have to supplement the populations with the illegals and include them in the census and let them vote. Okay, so the Christian perspective here, and I like to bring this up. Smash that like button if you love the Christian perspective in the scripture that I provide for each of these news stories. Romans 13 reminds us that government is meant to be a servant for good. Okay, and they are meant to punish evil and reward righteousness. Okay, when the government refuses to punish evil, or worse, joins it and condones it for their own interests, okay, as I just said, they really are condoning illegal immigration because it benefits them. Okay, and it's not because they care about these people, because they're brown people, because they're from different countries. They don't give a crap about these illegal immigrants and their human rights or anything like that. They don't care. They care about how it serves them. Okay. So when the government refuses to punish evil, or worse, joins it for its own benefit, it ceases to be a legitimate government in God's eyes. Okay. Sanctuary policies are rebellion. They are not compassion. Sanctuary policies are a way for these politicians to benefit. This is not compassion. They are enabling crime. They are destabilizing families, and they are creating cycles of poverty because, especially these Black communities in Chicago, right? You're taxing them like crazy to subsidize the illegals' lifestyles and provide food stamps and health care and things like that. And you're keeping them in these cycles of poverty because of the taxation, and it's gotten way out of hand. Okay, so Republican candidate P. Ray Easley, write that name down, made a point that every Illinoisan knows. This is common knowledge. It's called the Heroin Highway. Have you heard of it here in the state of Illinois? It's I-290. It's on I-290, and nearly $2 billion in heroin sales move right through Chicago's west side every year. That poison doesn't just stay in Chicago. It spreads to the rest of the country and to the rest of the state. Think about that. Chicago isn't just failing itself. And a lot of people will tell me, Kat, why do you talk about Chicago? I don't really care that much about Chicago. Yeah, well, it's not just failing itself, Chicago. It's failing everybody else, and they're exporting death. Okay, the way Chicago is being run, the sanctuary city policy, the sanctuary state policy that they're hiding behind is causing pills and injections and overdoses. And at the root of all of that is this failed policy in Illinois and in Chicago. And everybody knows somebody who's overdosed on heroin, okay, in Illinois. That's just the way it goes. And instead of dismantling these networks, politicians are posing with protest signs outside of ICE facilities. Okay, so we should be dismantling the heroin highway, the networks that funnel $2 billion worth of heroin sales out of the Chicago West Side every year. We should be dismantling that, but instead you've got politicians who are protesting, aiding and abetting, obstructing, and sheltering people who are evading federal law. Caroline Leavitt, Washington, D.C., at the White House, they need to start arresting these people. So, friends, how many fathers have to bury their sons because of fentanyl? Because fentanyl had come through, the pipeline and had funneled its way down to downstate Illinois or to central Illinois. Okay, how many mothers have to weep because the system chose politics over people? Okay, this is wickedness. Now I want to zoom out. Let's talk about Chicago longtime Democrat Danny Davis. Okay, so he is finally stepping down after 30 years in office. And who wants to take over his spot? He's a congressman. Who wants to take over his spot? That's LaShawn Ford. And I don't know about you, but it's pretty clear the contrast here between LaShawn Ford and Easley. So Easley, P. Ray Easley. There's a big contrast. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Ford wants more bureaucracy, more money allocated to these violence prevention programs, and Easley wants to work with local police and the federal agencies and clean up Chicago and first and foremost, shut down the heroin highway on I-290, okay, and break up these networks that allow fentanyl to be funneled not just to the rest of the state, but to the country, okay? So this race is more than about one district, okay? And you, like I, might get tired of talking about Chicago, and you're like, does it really matter? Why can't those people just leave me alone? I don't care if they, screwed themselves over. No, you should care, okay? Because we need to start clawing our way back to sanity. If we don't, we're going to keep losing our people, okay? Chicago is exporting death, okay, with the drugs, with the fentanyl. And if we don't rally up in Chicago, and if we don't excite the conservatives in Chicago to go vote and to go support candidates who are willing to stand with law enforcement, then Chicago's story will become the nation's story. You see? So I want to also provide a little history lesson for all y'alls. Smash that like button, subscribe right now, hit the subscribe button. A history lesson. When Rome fell, and this is in biblical times, okay, when Rome fell, it wasn't barbarians at the gate that did it first, okay? It was the rot from within. Open borders, corruption, political infighting, bread and circuses while families collapsed. I'm sure that sounds pretty familiar. In Chicago, they, I think, spent $5 million of taxpayer dollars to put on a NASCAR race. Bread and circuses. That was all Rome. Okay. Political infighting. The further up north you get, the less and less the Republican Party starts to look like the Republican Party. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. In central Illinois, the Republican Party isn't a Republican Party. Once you've gone down south and you've talked to Republican parties in, South Carolina, the Bible Belt there, yeah, these people are not Republicans. And I bring you at least a bill a day where all the Republicans vote for it, and then you're sitting here scratching your head. Wait, really? They voted for that? Yes, all of them did. We don't really have a Republican Party. And that's what happened in Rome. There was this political infighting going on, and there was no clear distinction about between right and wrong. And Chicago is our modern Rome. Okay, sanctuary cities are the new emperors tossing crumbs while real citizens live in fear. Okay, so who's cheering this on? The Juliana Strattons, the Daniel Bisses of the world, the career politicians who are more interested in selfies at protests rather than safety in their neighborhoods. Okay, so the sanctuary city mayors, the sanctuary state governor, J.B. Pritzker, okay, they are the emperors, and they toss little breadcrumbs, NASCAR races, or, the breadcrumbs for the violent prevention programs. They toss all of that out there, and real citizens continue to live in fear. And, if Chicago politicians cared as much as they do about gangs, as they do about ICE, the city would be safer than Mayberry, okay? But apparently Barney Fife, with one bullet, is too much law enforcement for their taste. They don't want any law enforcement there. I mean, Brandon Johnson came out and called law enforcement, quote, a sickness. Okay, he said jails are a sickness. So if they cared about gangs as much as they do about ICE, imagine, how safe that city would be. So let's end this portion of the show with a deeper truth. Sanctuary policies are not compassion. They are rebellion against God's order. Compassion is feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, welcoming a stranger, yes, but in a lawful way into a lawful community. It is not enabling cartels, breaking the law, allowing people to break federal immigration law, or abandoning citizens. So that's not compassion. Okay, there's a way to be compassionate. This is not it. The prophet Isaiah said, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." The sanctuary city policy, that is that in a nutshell. Okay, they are calling sanctuary city policy good when actually it's evil. They call it compassion when it's actually complicity in crime. They're being complicit in crime, and they call it justice. And actually, it's really injustice for law-abiding families. And as Christians, we are called to speak the truth in love, but also stand boldly against evil. And I think that the White House needs to be more bold and start arresting these mayors who are aiding and abetting and harboring. And we need to be stronger, okay? And we need to stand boldly against evil. We cannot sit silently while these leaders undermine the rule of law. Silence is not neutrality, and I think that's where the White House is at right now. They're like, okay, if we don't arrest these people, we're kind of being silent, and it's neutral, and we're staying neutral. No, silence is surrender, okay? These people are undermining the rule of law, and you cannot surrender. So it's time to stand up, vote smart, encourage your Chicago friends, your neighbors, if maybe you live in Chicago, encourage them to vote and support candidates who believe in order, faith, and family. And never forget, the first sanctuary we need is the sanctuary of truth. Okay, found in Christ, not in the corrupt city halls. Okay, we have to really get Chicago to find Jesus. And I think that it would turn itself around. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Peacekeeper initiatives. I am going to take a quick break. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel, because Governor J.B. Pritzker, yes, billionaire cupcake, Cupcake King. I like to call him Billionaire Cupcake King. He was defending this taxpayer-funded community violence intervention program, the Peacekeepers Initiative, and I've talked about it here on this program, and he posed with that guy for a photo op, but now Pritzker's talking about it, and he kind of broke his silence here. He says, well, you can't vet everybody you take a picture with. Okay, that's not really what this is about, dude. You're missing it. Okay. You can prevent these people from obtaining and getting taxpayer cash to go fight crime. So, folks, you can't make this stuff up. I'm going to be back. We're going to be talking about Governor J.B. Pritzker. And you won't want to miss it because we will be talking about Kamala Harris because she made a return to The View and she embarrassed herself epically. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we cut through the spin, we call out the nonsense, and we do it all with an unapologetic American flair. I'm your host, Kat, and today we're exposing the truth behind nonprofit organizations and how they helped fuel the border crisis. Let's be real, Joe Biden, he took an exit, but he left a border-sized crater in our national security, and really the biggest, sneakiest players weren't the politicians or the cartels, really. Those nonprofit organizations, yep, the tax-free do-gooders, they ran logistics for a mass illegal immigration operation. Take Catholic Charities, for instance. Catholic Charities USA, they pocketed $1.4 billion in 2022 alone. More than 60% of that came from government grants, your tax dollars. Then they turned around, used those tax dollars for bus rides, hotel rooms, and legal defense for people who blatantly broke our federal immigration laws. HIAS, they got millions in grants, and then they resettled people deep into the United States. They didn't do any kind of vetting, no transparency, and they had zero regard for the towns impacted by this overrun, like Springfield, Ohio. And just because the administration changed doesn't mean that the nonprofit conveyor belt has stopped. These groups have built a machine, and they built a machine under Joe Biden, and they're still using it to move tens of thousands of people, often under the radar. According to congressional watchdogs, just 4 major national profits helped transport and shelter over 35,000 illegal migrants in a single month. Just 4 helped transport and shelter 35,000 illegal immigrants in a single month. This is insane. That's not charity. That's infrastructure for illegal immigrants, and you helped pay for it. They housed them. They gave them hotel rooms. They gave them legal representation. And you helped pay for it, and you didn't even know it. Whether you knew it or not, they didn't care. Even now, as the new administration tries to restore law and order, these nonprofit organizations, they're lawyering up, they're pushing lawsuits, and they're working overtime to try to stall these deportations and keep the broken pipeline flowing. They want that pipeline to keep flowing, where they take tens of thousands of people and then they give them jobs. And they put them in jobs where they're ultimately going to be used as slave labor, because these companies are going to hang their illegal status over their heads. It's time to cut the cash, investigate the players, pull the nonprofit masks off, and we need to close up the border. We need to pull the nonprofit mask off the open borders agenda. Because if a group is using government money to move, house, and protect people in violation of federal law, that's not compassion, it's collusion. And I'll call it that. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you that the border crisis wasn't built by weak presidents. It really wasn't built by Joe Biden. It was powered by rich nonprofits hiding behind halos and hashtags. And our laws were trampled all over, and our communities were overwhelmed. Let's clean it up, and let's do it for real this time and defang these nonprofits. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you being here. Subscribe to the channel. Always subscribe. Today, we are going to be talking about Governor J.B. Pritzker, Billionaire Cupcake King. I like to call him that. He was caught defending the taxpayer-funded community violence intervention program after he had posted a photo with this so-called peacekeeper who was wanted in 4 states. Okay, so Folks, you can't really make this stuff up. Today we're digging into Governor J.B. Pritzker, into why Governor J.B. Pritzker keeps pouring hundreds of millions of dollars, your tax dollars, into these programs that don't work. And then his excuses here are pretty much laughable. Okay. And this reflects the broader corruption of Illinois politics. And as always, we're going to ground this in truth, history, satire, and a Christian worldview that makes sense of all of this madness that is going on in the state of Illinois. So here's what happened. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he takes a photo op, or there was this photo op where he took a picture with a peacekeeper. Okay, peacekeepers are folks working in these so-called anti-violence prevention programs, or violence intervention programs, whatever the hell they're called. Okay, so he was in a photo op and he took a picture with this guy, Kellen McMiller, something like that. And this guy was charged with murder, okay, after taking this photo with Governor J.B. Pritzker. But get this, in the murder, this is how the murder went down. It was a burglary crash. So it was a crash and grab on Chicago's Magnificent Mile. Okay, so this is, if you know anything about Chicago, that's not like the hood, okay? This is just Chicago. A lot of tourists there in Chicago's Magnificent Mile. So it was a deadly crash. He's wanted for murder. Now, this was after the photo was taken. But get this, while the photo was taken, he had warrants in 4 states. So 4 other states wanted him for crimes. So what does Governor J.B. Pritzker say? There's no way, by the way, when you take a picture with someone, to vet everybody. You know, Dick Durbin also took a picture, and I talked about this a couple of days ago with Gabriel Calixto, who was an illegal immigrant, and he's wanted and was wanted. They finally apprehended him under Kristi Noem's DHS for stabbing a girl, Emma Schaefer, Springfield, Illinois, allegedly stabbing a girl. And prior to that, when he took the photo with Dick Durbin, he was a convicted kidnapper. He got it pled down to unlawful restraint, but still, this tells you that the base of the Democrat Party is illegal immigrants and violent criminals. Okay, so, or both. Okay, so, this is a toddler excuse, really, that Governor J.B. Pritzker came up with. Take a listen to this clip. Here we go.
You're talking about community violence intervention. Yeah.
Right, but that funding isn't going to people who might be.
Well, you have to understand that the way that community violence intervention works is it is often the case that people who have been in prison before but served their time and may have been in gangs before, who are growing older, are actually some of the best people to have deterring people from joining gangs and from being involved in violence in their communities. That's one of the reasons it's worked. Community violence intervention in this state has worked. You've seen crime drop precipitously, especially violent crime. And again, one of the reasons for that has been organizations like CRED and other CVI organizations that have been funded by city, county, state, and the federal government. And Donald Trump has cut those funds, and that will have a deleterious effect on our ability to fight crime, in addition to the cuts that he's made to law enforcement across the United States. It's awful when anybody commits a crime, and when you say that we shouldn't have somebody who was involved in crime before in their lives involved in community violence intervention, that's just not how it works. We want people who understand, who've lived in the communities, who have fallen into that lifestyle, to work now to deter people from entering a life of crime, and particularly for our young people. There's no way, by the way, when you take a picture, to vet everybody. Do you know how many pictures I took out there with people who are sitting in the audience? I do it all the time. I do it when I'm walking along the street. We have terrific executive protection folks. But there's not a lot they can do. When people want to come up and take a picture with me, they can't, I'm sorry, let me see your background. Let me look you up before you can take a picture. That's just not how it works.
I mean, the suspect had warrants outstanding in multiple states, though.
That isn't something that our EPU can know. And honestly, we were invited into that environment. And we know that people who are involved in community violence intervention are people who have had a previous life of crime. Certainly nobody knew that this person had warrants in other states if they were active at the time.
Wow. All right. Well, you heard it there. Governor J.B. Pritzker doubling down, and he says this, quote, "It is often the case that people who have been in prison or gangs are actually the best people to deter violence." The hell? Wait a second. So you're telling me, JB, that the fox is the best to guard the hen house. Okay, the fox is now the best guard for the hen house, and the burglar is the best security consultant. I mean, that's what you're telling me. This is not rehabilitation. This is lunacy. I'm all, rehabilitation programs, jobs programs. I'm all for that for ex-cons. Okay. But we shouldn't be giving them vests and telling them to go play guidance counselor or go stop crime in the streets. Okay, there are jobs for ex-cons, McDonald's, okay, jobs programs through fast food, or just not policing. Okay, you don't hire a fox to watch the hen house. Okay, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Appreciate you guys being here. Big thank you to for you sending super chats. That is always so grateful for that. Thanks for caring about us. God bless you and keep it up. Of course, I care about you guys. I love you guys. I end the show every morning and I tell you guys I love you, and that I really mean that. Even the leftists who listen, I love you. I pray for repentance. I pray for you to receive Jesus Christ because he's coming back and you don't want to be left behind. You don't want Jesus to come back and you not be right with him. And that's why I included scripture, right? We're going to get to that here in just a second. First, I do want to get to retired Riverside Police Chief Thomas Weitzel, his comments surrounding Governor J.B. Pritzker's response here to this photo that he had taken with this hardened criminal. Like at that point, you're wanted in 4 states, and then you're charged with murder for crash and grab that was deadly and killed somebody. Like you're a hardened criminal. Okay. This wasn't like he took picture with somebody who was jaywalking. And I think JB's missing the point. We're not so much upset that you took a picture with a criminal. We're upset that he's a criminal getting paid with taxpayer dollars and the photo op was facilitated in the first place, and that it was in like that you were there in the first place with a bunch of criminals who are wanted. And obviously the Peacekeepers initiative is not vetted. Okay. Otherwise he wouldn't have been there for the photo op. Okay, you're clearly not using ex-cons. You're using current criminals for these peacekeeper initiatives. Anyway, so here's what the retired Riverside Police Chief, Thomas Weitzel, had said, quote, Center Square, "Show us how it's working." You heard JB there saying, oh, it's working. Show us, though. We haven't seen any data, and I haven't seen any anecdotal data or anecdotal information. That's what the sheriff said. Okay, the retired police chief said. Okay, so he's right. We throw $375 million that we know of. There's probably way more being funneled into these peacekeeper initiatives. But 375 mil at the least. I mean, you have to provide a lick of evidence that suggests that these programs reduce violence, and they haven't. Chicago's bleeding. We see the carjackings are up, shootings are up, gang violence, gang activity is up. All of it's up. So what do I call this? This is political theater. These crime intervention, violence intervention programs, they are just slush funds for activists and insiders. So you've got the Peacekeepers Initiative, and there's an executive director, and she's probably not an ex-con. She's probably a Democrat, elitist, or she's a friend of JB or a friend of a state lawmaker or something. I don't even know, but it's a nonprofit group, right? And she's the executive director, and she's getting paid nice 6-figure salary. And then she turns around, donates, and contributes all of her time and energy to the Democrat Party. And then you've got the jobs programs for the criminals, and then they dress it up as prevention. It's all virtue signaling with your money, and it's killing our communities. And the jobs program is, hey, ex-con, I'm going to throw some pennies at you, $200 a day. I'm going to throw this at you, and then in return, we expect you to vote for us. and, maybe knock on a few doors or maybe hang up some door hangers or something like that. Go campaign for us. And this is what's really going on. So Pritzker funds a guy called a peacekeeper who ends up being charged with murder. That's like hiring a pyromaniac as your fire marshal, okay? Or better yet, it's like hiring Keith Olbermann to run your anger management class. It's funny. If it wasn't so freaking dangerous, it'd be funny. These peacekeepers are not keeping the peace, obviously. They're keeping crime in business. And it's the old Illinois trick. Create the problem, fund the problem, pose for photos, then blame Republicans when people notice the streets are still dangerous. They're just blaming Republicans. Oh, Donald Trump pulled the federal funding for these peacekeeper programs. If this weren't so tragic, like I said, it'd be comedy. So Pritzker whines that Donald Trump cut the federal funding for these programs. And I say, thank God Donald Trump did. Somebody did it. But Trump knew that this was all scams. He knew the schemes and the scams that were going on. And that's why he pulled the federal funding, because Becky, who's the executive director of these nonprofit programs, is getting paid six-figure salaries with taxpayer dollars, and Becky is like heading up, campaigns for, all of the Democrat legislators there in the Chicago area. So, friends, this is just the corrupt middlemen who lost their gravy train. They are upset about this. And that's why Pritzker is so upset about Donald Trump cutting the federal funding, because the corrupt middlemen have lost their gravy train. And therefore, the people at the tippity top, these legislators who rely on those middlemen, are going to be hurt somewhat. And they're going to take a few blows because of the cuts of the federal funding cuts. So here's the truth. Crime is deterred when criminals face consequences. It's pretty freaking easy. You don't stop gangs by giving them state-funded jobs and neon vests and telling them that they're peacekeepers. You don't stop gangs by arresting lawbreakers, you stop gangs by arresting them, prosecuting them, and upholding justice. And I want to point out biblically, Ecclesiastes 8:11 says, when the sentence for the crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. So you need to quickly arrest these people, quickly prosecute them, and quickly uphold justice. And when you carry out this whole we're going to rehabilitate you program, and I'm not totally against rehabilitation programs, but this rehabilitation program designed for you to be a guidance counselor, to go out there and stop crime or police crime, you being an ex-con, you're probably not the best person to do that. What's going on here is there's schemes, and their hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong if you don't deal with these criminals quickly. Okay, so I want to be very clear. This isn't just about the picture with JB. Okay, one picture or one guy. I've told you several times, there was a peacekeeper. His name was Oscar Montes. There's been a few others. Oscar Montes, I will never, there are some videos you cannot ever erase from your brain. That one I can't erase from my brain. Charlie Kirk getting shot, can't erase from that from my brain. Oscar Montes ripping somebody out of their car while they're stopped at a stoplight and curb stomping him and smashing his face in to the point of him being half blind. That I can't shake and can't ever unsee. So this isn't just one guy. I want to be clear. This is a pipeline of corruption. And Illinois politicians have turned taxpayer money into an ATM for failed programs. Schools are failing, streets are unsafe, taxes keep climbing, and yet Governor J.B. Pritzker finds $375 million to fund really unproven violence prevention programs, or fund these violence interrupters who are actually violence purveyors, or they perpetrate violence. I mean, clearly, look at this Kellen McMiller guy. So Working families are crushed under inflation and property taxes, meanwhile, and parents worry about their schools indoctrinating the kids rather than educating them. Small businesses are fleeing. And what's JB's answer? JB's answer is more government handouts to failed programs, and it's complete madness. So I also want to take us back in history. We talked about Rome a little bit, how Chicago is modern Rome. Illinois is modern Rome. Honestly, Rome, just before the fall, was known for its corruption. Bread and circuses, we know this. I talked about the $5 million to the NASCAR races, the public funds wasted on schemes that pleased the mob but weakened the state. So what do I mean by that? They paid off Rome, paid off criminals and rebels, and they hoped that they would calm down, and they hoped to control them. But you can't really control a criminal. So the Democrat Party is the same party of the 1800s. They want to control these criminals, and they think that by paying them, that's going to provide some or create some sort of allegiance. Okay, that's what their hope is. But it never really works out for them because what happened to Rome? It crumbled. Okay, instead of discipline and law, Rome paid off criminals and rebels, hoping they'd calm down. And I know that sounds familiar to you. Illinois is modern Rome. Pritzker is the emperor, tossing breadcrumbs at the crowds while gangs run the streets. And they're paying the criminals, thinking that the criminals will have some sort of allegiance to them. But that is never going to be the case because, look, Gabriel Calixto, he's a part of some of these nonprofits. He was a volunteer. That's how he met Emma Schaefer. Emma Schaefer was a part of like nonprofit organizations. She was a do-gooder for immigrants, right? Immigration Project or whatever. And she was a do-gooder for all of that. They will turn around on you in an instant. Why? Because they're hardened criminals. So they think that like they're going to buy some sort of allegiance or loyalty from these criminals. Not going to happen. Okay, history tells us where this winds up, and it's complete and utter collapse. So from a Christian worldview, the Bible tells us in John 14:27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." So Pritzker and his programs offer the world's version of peace. It is shallow, it is bought, it is fake, and they're hoping in exchange you will work for the Democrat Party. Okay. But Christ offers real peace. What really needs to happen is these people need to go to jail. They need to be locked up. And they need to find Jesus in jail. And through truth, justice, that will truly transform the lives of these hardened gang members. You're never going to be able to buy them off with this shallow, fake program. Okay. Real community peace doesn't come from paying criminals to wear orange vests. Okay, it comes from restoring families, empowering churches, strengthening fathers, teaching kids right from wrong in school, teaching the Bible in school. And that's what Illinois needs. That's what we need. So my call to action, first we have to expose the schemes. Okay, we're never going to get anywhere if we don't expose it. That's what this show is for. And then I expect you to share this truth with your neighbors. I expect you to demand transparency from your local leaders. Data. Governor, where's the proof that $375 million bought us anything but more crime? Second, we need to support real reform. That means electing leaders who believe in law and order and locking these people up. And we need to elect leaders who are faithful and have faith. And really, our prisons need to have Jesus in them. You know, preachers, pastors need to be going in and preaching to these people every single day. So that way their hearts are transformed and they accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. And it means that we should back the police. We shouldn't back criminals who are disguised as police. Okay, that's the real reform would be backing the police. And most importantly, we have to rebuild our communities with a Christian foundation. It probably wouldn't come as a shock to you that Chicago, Decatur, some of these areas that have really intense crime, these kids can't read or write, and their schools definitely make no mention of Jesus, and there is no Christian foundation in those communities that value life, that value law, value liberty. And we need to restore that Christian foundation in these communities and in our schools. And I am calling on teachers, public school teachers, start baptizing your kids in the sink. I really don't care. Do whatever it takes to make sure these kids are growing up with a Christian foundation, because if they were, they wouldn't turn around and seek refuge in these gangs or seek family in these gangs, or look for the answers by joining a gang. So Pritzker can pose for all the pictures he wants. No amount of spin can hide the truth. Illinois is paying criminals to police themselves, and it's failing. If we want real peace, it's not going to come out of Springfield's schemes here with the peacekeeper initiatives and the violence prevention programs. It's going to come from God's truth, from strong families and citizens who are willing to stand up. So smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We're going to come back. I have got to admit, I love Kamala Harris's book tour. I find it very, very amusing. She's on a book tour and she's been, doing all kinds of media stops. She appeared on The View, and I want to get to this because it's hilarious. She embarrassed herself yet again. I'll be right back. Hey, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you being here. Let's get to some of your comments. Catholic Charities funding is not solely funded by government assistance. Donations to the charity come from worldwide, yes. So that's one thing about nonprofits, and I think that the Catholic Charities, they're technically a nonprofit organization. Nonprofits, they don't have to disclose how much of it is actually charity and how much of it is actually government dollars. Okay, so it's all kind of lumped in under this publicly funded. Okay, so you could get private donations from somebody like George Soros. I'm not sure exactly if he donated to Catholic Charities, but some of your more Democrat elitists donating to Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities turns around and, I actually talked to a Romanian immigrant a few years ago, and he talked about how he was, and this isn't, somebody who's seeking asylum, because it doesn't meet the standard or meet the definition of asylum seeking. Okay, so he started out in Romania, and then he went to Spain, then he went to Mexico, then he went to the United States. Asylum, you go from Ukraine to the United States. And typically, like the Ukrainian refugee on the train who was stabbed in the neck by, what was his name? Debron, or whatever his name was. He stabbed her in the neck. Okay, so she was actually a refugee. She met that definition. She sought asylum here, and she came straight from Ukraine to the United States. That is an asylum seeker. And she was fleeing a war. Okay. This Romanian immigrant I talked to, he wasn't fleeing anything. He was straight up told me he just wanted to seek better economic outcomes. Okay. He was a mechanic and was making $300 a month. And he knew that mechanics made way more here in the United States. And that's why he wanted to come here. So what happened was he went to Romania, flew to Spain. And while he was on this flight, or this nonprofit, I don't know if it was Catholic Charities, but there was a nonprofit who organized the flight from Romania to Spain. Okay, while they're on the flight, they get literature about the United States and how great it is, and how to enter and they're told how to enter the country from Mexico. So they get to Mexico, from Spain to Mexico, and then in Mexico they paid, I think it was like $3,000 a head. There was 3 of them, $9,000 to cross over the Mexican border or the Mexico border into the United States. And they paid the guy with the big gun, who I'm assuming is part of the cartels or human trafficker of some kind. They paid him thousands of dollars, $9,000. A lot of people in the United States don't have $9,000, just to let you know. This guy had obviously $9,000 to waste to have a human trafficker traffic him over to the United States. How did I meet this fellow, by the way? He was panhandling on the side of the road. So it's really not, I mean, I feel really bad for these illegal immigrants because they're told in all this literature how great the United States is. Here's how you do it. You pay this guy, he traffics you, and what was really sad about it was that the human trafficker only got him so close to the border. So then they had to walk across like a river in order to get into the United States, him and his family. So really sad, walk across the river. And then they go to this nonprofit organization that they're told to go to in this pamphlet, and they get a van from a church. Like I said, I don't know if it was Catholic Charities, but there's nonprofit organizations who are really facilitated under the Biden administration the open border madness and people coming in. Okay, they were the ones who were bringing them in. Okay, they probably would have never come into the United States had it not been for their help all along the way. These nonprofit organizations. And these nonprofit organizations, a lot of them got like USAID dollars, tax dollars. Okay, and you're right. Some of those come from donations, and a lot of the time the donations are from Democrat elitists. So your billionaires, think George Soros, think your billionaires, your Democrat elitists. Okay, that is how these nonprofits function. Okay, let's get to Kamala Harris. I want to get to that. Appreciate you guys being here. Smash the like button and be sure to subscribe. Always send super chats. Love when people send me super chats. That's so sweet. God bless you guys. I will always care about you. I will always bring you the news, and I'm going to bring you scripture to pair along with it. Today we are talking about Kamala Harris's book tour. Hilarious. I find it amusing. I'm sure you find it amusing as well. The Democrats are clueless as to how they lost, and they don't know how to get the American people back. The American people can't stand the Democrat Party anymore. They really just can't stand them. And they've got no idea how to bring the American people back to get the Democrat Party to be popular again. I think that they're going to push out Pete Buttigieg. I would imagine he's going to be their pick. He's a useful idiot, but he's not a Jasmine Crockett who's too idiotic, or an AOC. She might be on the ticket with Pete Buttigieg, but Pete Buttigieg kind of presents himself as composed and not completely deranged like a Kamala Harris. He presents himself that way. I'm not saying he isn't deranged. Believe me, he is. But I think they're going to push him out there. Now, Kamala Harris is sort of the poster child here for how in the woods they really are. They really don't understand how much the American people don't like them anymore. And they are completely lost. And she's kind of coping with losing here, Kamala Harris, like Hillary Clinton. A little bit like Hillary Clinton. She's coping with this loss, and she's blaming everybody else. She's saying it's everybody else's fault because they didn't sufficiently support her during her race or during the campaign. Now, she will never admit it's probably because she was a lousy candidate. And these Democrats will never admit that it's lousy candidates that they keep putting forward. Hillary Clinton, lousy candidate. Joe Biden, honestly, lousy candidate. The only reason why he got elected, one, they stole the election. Two, maybe he wasn't as lousy as a Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris because he wasn't completely, I mean, he was deranged because he was senile. Like I said, he stole the election. 80 million votes. Yeah, give me a break. Obama didn't even get that. But Joe Biden was how do I say this? Composed, more posed, I guess, especially in the beginning, like when he ran against Donald Trump in 2020. And then, shortly after announcing his nomination, he hid and didn't campaign at all. And that's the only reason why I think that he got somewhat elected. Really, it was the stealing of the election that got him into the position of the presidency. But anyway, yeah, she's a lousy candidate. Joe Biden was a lousy candidate. Hillary Clinton was a lousy candidate. Honestly, they've got lousy candidates, and they've always had lousy candidates. And that's why the American people don't like them anymore, because they keep pushing forward these lousy candidates. There were much better choices. I mean, Tim Walz as the VP pick, over a Josh Shapiro, even over a Governor J.B. Pritzker. Like, love him or hate him, he is at least an ambitious guy and has money and could have brought something to the table for the Democrat Party. But you chose Tim Walz, a nobody, and he's a loser and a lousy candidate. Okay, so you keep picking these lousy candidates. No wonder the American people can't stand you, okay, and can't stand the party. So one of the things that she did during her campaign was go on The View, and she gave a terrible answer when Sunny Hostin, she had actually asked this question, and I remember it clear as day. She asked, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? And she couldn't answer it, and she pretty much said nothing. I'd be the exact same as Joe Biden, which pretty much effectively ended her campaign right then and there. So just yesterday, it was yesterday, she returned to The View, and she addressed this answer again. And it's so funny. I noticed the QR code here. I'm going to pull this up. You see the little QR code in the bottom left-hand corner? They are disgusting, okay? They are helping her sell her book. Yet this is the media that says, we don't pick a side. We're very neutral. Absolutely ridiculous. I've never had this. I mean, I've had people on to talk about their book, but I've never actually put a QR code in for people to shop the book. Okay. I say, the book is available on Amazon. You can go grab it there. I've said that. I've interviewed people about their book. I've never really done it in my full show. I do it usually as a supplement video or extra programming. I don't really do it in my mainstream programming, but this is shameless. I mean, truly ridiculous here that they're putting a QR code up there for people to go shop her book. And then they're going to claim, we're journalists. We're ABC is a moderate network, or ABC is centrist. Give me a break, you fucking losers. All right, take a listen.
I didn't fully appreciate how much people wanted to know there was a difference between me and President Biden. I thought it was obvious. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to offer a difference in a way that would be received or suggested to be a criticism. Mm-hmm. And in the campaign, full time, I was pointing out the differences. My theory of the case was we need to bring costs down. We're going to extend the child tax credit. We're going to have Medicaid.
Wake up knowing what's happening in your community. We have breaking news for you out of Volusia County. We can expect to see showers.
I did.
Oh, sorry. They cut to commercial there. And as she was explaining, the differences between she and Joe Biden, or trying to explain the differences between she and Joe Biden, they cut to commercial right away. You saw it there at the end, because she was doing so badly. She was embarrassing herself, and they cut to break. So here is the transcript, and I'm just going to read it for you. She goes, I didn't fully appreciate how people wanted to know that there was a difference, but know that there was a difference between me and President Biden. I thought it was obvious, she says. I didn't want to offer a difference in a way that would be received as a suggested or be suggested to be a criticism. And in the campaign full time, I was pointing out the differences. My theory of the case was we need to bring costs down. We're going to extend the child tax credit. Okay, number one, she thought the differences were obvious. So obvious that she couldn't enunciate them, I guess, because she still didn't enunciate the differences between she and Joe Biden there in this clip, in this most recent clip from yesterday. And prior to yesterday, while she was on the campaign, she wasn't able to enunciate them. She said, there's really no difference between Joe and I. Okay. So, and I guess she said that the differences were, she wanted to bring costs down. So dumb. I mean, yeah, by being the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually brought costs up. Yeah, okay. There was no difference between you and Joe Biden. That's the thing. So she was pointing out the differences on the campaign trail. Okay, the show that she was on, when they asked her, The View, Sunny Hostin, she had asked, what are the differences between you and Joe Biden? Sort of a softball question. She was on that show during the campaign trail. Okay, and she didn't outline the differences then. She's not outlining really the differences now. And, she says we need to bring costs down, and that was her main difference between Joe Biden. Okay, but yes, under Joe Biden, the prices were high, but the problem was during the campaign trail, lady, you couldn't explain how you would bring the prices down. Okay, you couldn't offer solutions. And people kept asking you, okay, how are you going to bring the prices down? So the primary reason she thinks she lost, Navarro, she asked her this, what is the primary reason why you think you lost? And she goes, well, there's many factors. Yeah, you can say that again. Let's take a listen to this clip here. This was also on The View from yesterday. Here we go.
Philadelphia rally the night before, and I was sitting behind your husband Doug and Maya and your family, and I remember hugging them and them telling me, we got this. I felt so good going into election day, and then I read in the book that you did too. I went into election day thinking you were going to win.
Yeah.
So did you.
Yeah, I did.
So, it was a very tight race, but ultimately, if you have to pin it down to one thing, what was the primary reason, do you think, that you lost?
There are many factors, I think, that played into the outcome of that election. But I think probably one of the biggest in my mind is we just didn't have enough time.
You didn't have
We didn't have
enough
enough time. We didn't have enough time.
Oh, yeah. Well, you didn't.
And, one of the reasons I wrote the book is this is unprecedented. Think about this.
Yeah.
That there's a race for president of the United States. The current sitting president is running for re-election. 3.5 months from the election, he decides not to run. The sitting vice president then takes the mantle, running against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years with 107 days until the election. And by the way, another piece of what is unprecedented and a bit historical about that race, it is the closest presidential race in the 21st century in terms of the outcome.
Wow.
Say that again, because he likes to say over and over again, he's got a mandate.
And that's part of why I wrote this book.
He's got a mandate. He does have a mandate from the American people. Look, she goes, oh, we didn't have enough time. Gosh darn it. That's the biggest reason. The biggest reason was we didn't have enough time. Okay, that wasn't true. Because because the longer she was the nominee, I'm going to be honest with you, if they had more time, her chances would have been even worse, because the more people saw of her out on the campaign trail, the more people didn't want to vote for her. So honestly, the 107 days or whatever it was probably too long. Okay. And the reason why, Joe Biden announced that he wasn't seeking re-election after the primaries was because she wouldn't have made it through a primary, and everybody around her knew that. So she tries to portray it as if it's close. I love Lisa. She says, not a tight race. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't close. Trump won all of the swing states. He won the popular vote. The electoral vote wasn't even close. Okay, another lie. This woman can't even stop lying. So this response was really bizarre. And take a notice of really, I want you to pay attention to what she says here, but I do want you to notice her mannerisms, because this whole finger wagging thing and the wobbling back and forth, really weird. And I don't know, maybe she had stopped at her wine club where she uses her alias to buy wine. This is an actually thing. And I don't know about you, but I don't know any alcoholic or anybody who's not an alcoholic who would go to a winery or like this wine. It's like a wine bar kind of. You can buy bottles of wine there, and she buys her bottle of wines under an alias. I think that's bizarre and weird. But take a look at her physical appearance here, as well as take a listen to what she says.
This person and what we just saw in terms of a presentation at the United Nations. I talk about it. I talked about, remember in the debate?
Yeah.
They laughed at him the last time he was in front of the UN.
Yeah, this time
You remember just about, I don't know, several weeks ago, that meeting with Xi and Kim Jong-un and Putin?
Yeah.
You think they're not laughing?
Oh, they are.
As they create a new axis of partnership. What's happening? You bring people into the Oval Office. I have spent a lot of time in the Oval Office. I have spent time in the Oval Office with the president, receiving our allies and our friends from around the world. And consistently, we have seen Donald Trump bring people into the Oval Office, be they a United States governor or the head of a state of a friendly nation, and embarrass them and ridicule and demean them. That is not what a president does. This individual who occupies our White House right now,
The people's house.
has decided that he will be an emperor in his mind who will demonstrate his power by demeaning and belittling and making people feel small. But this is...
Okay. So that's Kamala Harris. She claimed that leaders at the UN were probably laughing at him and that they had laughed at him before. Donald Trump delivered a speech, and we'll actually get to his speech at the UN. There's some troubling things about an escalator and the teleprompter, and I'll get to that here in just a second. But here's the thing. She leaves out the part here where, they were laughing at him. She leaves out that Germany was laughing at him when he said that they were putting themselves in a bind in their reliance for Russian oil. Okay, so he had said this in 2018, and it turns out, fast forward to 2025, that's exactly where we're at. Germany is completely reliant on Russia, and they are experiencing blackouts. They're not getting enough power. They don't have the oil, and they're relying completely on Russia. And Donald Trump had talked about this in 2018 at the UN, and the Germans were laughing at President Donald Trump's speech. They're not laughing anymore because, fast forward, he was exactly right. Trump always winds up being right, by the way. Take a listen. Here we go. This was his speech in 2018.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe. Germany will become totally dependent.
You could definitely see that the Germans were laughing at him. They're not laughing anymore because he was right. Okay, so yet another example of how they were helping Russia while we were providing their defense. Okay, so we were providing the defense for Germany, and they were helping Russia by becoming totally reliant on Russia, and that's, you know, bolstering their economy. And really, ultimately, that's probably what led them to invade Ukraine, or gave them, you know, the ability to invade Ukraine, because of the economic power that they've obtained from this reliance Germany has on them now. And I think it's so funny they call Trump a Russian agent. That's such an insane take. Even back then in 2018, Donald Trump was saying, hey, don't be reliant on Russia. They're an adversary. We're providing you defense. What the hell is your problem? And they were like laughing at him for it. And then fast forward to today, that is exactly what in Germany can't even heat their homes. Their people are dealing with blackouts because they're completely reliant on Russia for energy. Okay, so Kamala Harris, she gave the globalist response there in The View while she was interviewing with The View, and she wants us to bend over, essentially, for the UN and for all the globalists. She wants us to do that, just as Joe Biden did. And you know who actually was embarrassing on the world stage? It wasn't Donald Trump. He's not embarrassing. Right. Fast forward, he was right, and they were chuckling at him, but they're not laughing now. Joe Biden is the guy who we all laughed at, who was on the world stage. He would quite literally fall asleep, appeared to have pooped his pants on occasion, and he would lose focus. I can't even imagine a Kamala Harris on the world stage, by the way. She wouldn't be able to deliver a speech at the UN without 17 word salads, and, you know, 17 word salads later, she still hasn't said anything. That is a person that I would not want on a world stage, and I couldn't even imagine her being on a world stage. So this is their Democrat leader. I mean, the Democrat Party needs help, and she's like the poster child for not knowing what's going on with the Democrat Party, and she's the poster child for how in the woods they actually are. The American people, the Democrat Party is not popular with the American people anymore. Speaking about Donald Trump and the UN, I do want to talk about that because he did give an address at the UN on Tuesday. That was yesterday. But there are some issues, and I want to talk about those issues. So there was an issue with the escalator. The escalator had stopped abruptly the minute he stepped on it with the First Lady, Melania Trump, and they were kind of forced to walk up it. So I'm going to share the video here with you. Here we go. You'll see it. And it stops the second Trump gets on it. Okay. Here we go. So here's Trump, Melania. They're walking toward the escalator. They get on it. And the second he gets on it, it stops.
President Trump. Schumer.
And then they're forced to go up it and walk up the escalator. Okay. So there's that. And he had made a comment, which I thought was really funny. He goes, "Thank goodness the First Lady is in great shape. Otherwise, she might have fallen." And then he joked and he said that he was in great shape as well. You know, but then it gets even crazier. Okay, this might have been whatever, a fluke, a coincidence, a curious coincidence. But then his teleprompter didn't work. And he says this: "I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter isn't working." And he says this while he's up there, and he kind of looks, you know, irked a little bit. And, you know, he looks like he's a little frustrated. I mean, up to this point, like, okay, the escalator, now the teleprompter, what the hell's going on? He says, "I'm very happy to be up here with you, nevertheless." And that way you speak more from the heart, you know. He says, I mean, this is the president of the United States. He doesn't rely on a teleprompter much like Joe Biden did while he was in office. But I will say this, you know, it's probably hard for a president to get up there. I mean, he's got a lot going on. Okay, this has been kind of a crazy week, and he doesn't have his teleprompter. You know, it's kind of important. He's got tons of speeches, tons of things he's got to talk about. And, you know, he said, you can speak more from the heart. I can say that whoever is operating this teleprompter, though, is in big trouble. And, you know, he drew all kinds of laughter. And, you know, they say that, oh, he doesn't do well with our foreign allies, and he doesn't do well with other countries. Like, this crowd was eating out of the palm of his hand. And clearly he was frustrated, I would imagine, very frustrated up to this point. The teleprompter not working, the escalator not working. Now, the teleprompter did start working finally. But Town Hall, her name is Katie Pevlich, and I'm going to share her tweet here with you. She was there. And she said, the escalator stopped as soon as the First Lady and President Donald Trump stood on it upon their arrival at the UN. Then the teleprompter wasn't working. And then the microphones, which were audible for the previous speaker, were not amplifying sound at the same level when Trump started speaking. And it was really hard to hear him. Let's take a listen to some of his remarks at the UN that he gave yesterday.
No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much.
He handled that like a champ. He really did. So according to the London Times, well, the main UN audio feed to TV news channel switched over to a foreign language translation towards the end of the speech, obscuring some of his words. So the justification here for the audio, as you saw Katie, she's the town hall reporter. She'd put on her X account that the audio wasn't audible, like it was audible for the previous speaker, but it wasn't really audible for Donald Trump when he started speaking, and it was really hard to hear him in the room. They're saying that the reason why was because they switched over to a foreign language translation towards the end of his speech, and it kind of cut off some of his words or whatever, so they were explaining it away in the London Times. Look, Trump handled that like a champ. He made a joke out of it, and you know, I am not as forgiving or not as, I don't know, lighthearted when it comes to these things, especially the current climate that we're living in. So this is raising some questions, the escalator, the teleprompter, the audio, raising questions about the intentionality of this. So White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt, she referenced actually this story. I'll share it with you. Here she is on X. She says, if someone at the UN intentionally stopped the escalator as President Trump and First Lady were stepping on, they need to be fired and investigated immediately. Here is a report from the Sunday Times, I think, is what this is. To mark Trump's arrival, UN staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell him that they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. So this was posted on Sunday, the Times, sorry. So it was on Sunday. they posted this, and he delivered the remarks on Tuesday. So this needs to be investigated here. Okay. And here's why. I'm going to share my thoughts here. The story, the UN, about the UN staffers, joked about stopping the escalators and the elevators and saying that they were out of money, so Trump would have to walk. That's kind of remarkable. I mean, this is not a curious coincidence at that point, and people have to be investigated. And I'm really pissed about that because this is a what's wrong with Secret Service? Okay, this is not joking. This is the President of the United States. Given our current political climate, this is a big problem, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Real Clear Politics' Susan Crabtree, she pointed out the problem with the escalators. And Crabtree, she has Secret Service sources, and she said that there was a concern about the incident putting President Donald Trump in a dangerous position. She said people were asking why the Secret Service didn't close ranks around President Donald Trump once the escalator stopped and immediately get him off the escalator. They shouldn't have, if that escalator stopped, I mean, so say, hypothetically, I don't know, or probably this was not happening in any kind of way, but slowing him down for an assassin, okay? And if UN was coordinating that with, say, an assassin, I mean, this is what the Secret Service should be thinking, okay? They published that on Sunday in the Times. And were they coordinating with somebody to try to slow him down? We really need to take this kind of stuff more seriously and not dismiss the unhinged, really leftist behavior that could be potentially dangerous. So here's Susan Crabtree on X. Why did the Secret Service allow President Donald Trump and Melania to get onto the stalled escalator that day at the UN General Assembly before his speech without quickly moving to protect the leader of the free world and his wife? Okay, you stop the escalator. That's bizarre. And it stops almost immediately as soon as they get on it. One would think they're trying to slow the president down, or they're trying to control the rate at which they go up the escalator. I don't know. So the stalled escalator with President Donald Trump and the First Lady stuck on it was a classic setup for an assassination hit. Like, typically, this is where you start to see assassinations happen. When you pause the escalator or, disrupt the travel of the President of the United States, this started to look like a classic setup for an assassination hit. Yet the Secret Service barely noticed. They didn't pull the President of the United States and the First Lady of the United States off the suddenly stopped stairs. So while President Donald Trump and his Justice Department and Pam Bondi and the Secret Service celebrate Ryan Routh's conviction, who was the second attempted assassin on President Donald Trump's life. He was convicted actually yesterday. The president's security team, with a zero-fail mission, need to be ever vigilant. Okay? I mean, this guy has been almost assassinated twice. What the hell is the Secret Service doing here? Why didn't they take him off the escalator? Today could have been horrible. Sources in the Secret Service community are very concerned about what they witnessed from fellow agents today when President Donald Trump was stalled and vulnerable. It's a similar critique to the Secret Service delayed response in getting Trump off the stage after a bullet grazed his ear on July 13th in Pennsylvania. Of course, the Secret Service totally botched Pennsylvania as well. So I didn't think this was funny. The UN people who stopped the escalator, maybe. I mean, they printed this in the Times and they joked about stopping the escalators or elevators and joking with President Donald Trump saying that he's got to walk because they don't have any more money. I don't think that's a joke. I think that it's serious, and I'm done playing around with these people. And given the current climate and the attempts made against President Donald Trump, such questions are very important to ask. Like, was this coordinated? Was there a hit set up? And, obviously the hit wasn't successful. He's home now. He left the UN without a bullet in his head. But Ryan Routh, the would-be assassin in the golf course incident, he was convicted on Tuesday. And I get that the UN is pleading innocence, claiming that these were all coincidental incidences. Here's what the UN said in response. They said, regarding the escalator, the safety mechanism was inadvertently triggered by someone who was ahead of the president on the escalator. Okay. The escalator was immediately reset and is in operation. An official from the UN said. Regarding the teleprompter, we have no comment since we don't operate that teleprompter. The interpretation audio was heard when a non-official interpreter pressed the wrong button. So I told you about the audio being scrambled and people really couldn't hear him in the room. I guess somebody pressed the wrong button, which briefly allowed the non-UN interpreter to be heard. Yeah, I mean, inadvertent. The escalator was inadvertent. Somebody pressed the wrong button. I don't know. You guys aren't convincing me. This is not funny. Okay, whoever did this and thought it was a joke, as they had alluded to in the Times, it's not funny. It's dangerous. I mean, even the teleprompter situation, when you distract the president, from his speech, and you purposefully change up the teleprompter, you adjust the audio, you are creating a vulnerable state of mind. Okay. And the president is not on his A game. Secret Service is distracted, or the people around him are distracted. You're creating a vulnerable environment, okay, by messing with him. Okay, this is the leader of the free world we're talking about here, and shame on the Secret Service for not getting him off that elevator and taking him off, because that's weird, and the Secret Service should have been triggered by that. They should have said, hey, this is odd. They need to be on guard, head on a swivel, because of our current political climate, and because this president has been almost assassinated twice now. So why wouldn't they run towards him and protect him? I was thinking the same thing, Kat. Yeah, Lisa, same wavelength. I don't get why they didn't run and protect him. Like right then and there. I am not as gracious as President Donald Trump is, and people say that you're fired. I think he's a pretty gracious guy, honestly. If that would have happened to me, and I was the leader of the free world, I was the president, and I was there to deliver a speech, and the escalator thing had happened, one, I would have gotten down to the bottom of it before I left, but I probably wouldn't have even delivered the speech. Secret Service shouldn't have even allowed him to deliver the speech, being that there was somebody. And how did they not know? I mean, this was published on Sunday in the Times, that they were joking around about stopping the elevator. Secret Service, these people should be combing through articles and should be aware of people making jokes online about stopping escalators and elevators that the president is on, and putting him in a vulnerable environment. So, yeah, I didn't think it was funny. President Donald Trump, he's got more humor than I do and more grace than I do, I guess. All right, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I so do appreciate you tuning in this morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's a daily show. I've been kind of late lately, like 6:15. Eventually, I'll get back to 6. Don't worry, folks. Hey, I'm usually a morning person, but the last couple of weeks have not been a morning person. So we'll get back to 6:05 is usually when I like to start, but 6 to 8 around that time. So smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and always support the program by visiting patriotpumpenergy.com, buying your bottle of pre-workout today. Promo code ConservativeCat, $10 off at checkout, and you can always send super chats. I really do appreciate you always commenting and being engaged. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.